What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's been a little bit since we've done a team review episode, so we're going to do that today. We're going to go over someone who did slightly an RB0 strategy. I asked you guys to send in your teams if you did RB0 because I wanted to analyze some of those. No one went at least from the submissions, no one went pure RB0, taking a running back first in maybe the 8th or ninth round. But we have one today that did focus a little bit more in the early rounds on tight end and wide receiver, so we'll take a look at that. But first, we've got the stat of the day. So there were 4 quarterbacks last season with at least 10 passing touchdowns inside the 5-yard line. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Josh Allen, and who was the 4th? So let's jump right into the draft. So as you'll see, like I said, it is not pure RB0. Michael Thomas, George Kittle, Kenny Golladay for the first 3 rounds. Then goes much more heavy at running back. James Conner, Cam Akers, Le'Veon Bell. Back to wide receiver, taking DK Metcalf in the 7th. 8th round, where it's Zach Moss. Then Josh Allen, Steelers defense. Brandon Cooks, Matthew Stafford, Mecole Hardman, Tevin Coleman, Zane Gonzalez, and Damian Harris. So like I said, not pure RB0, and if we look at this, and we're going to talk about this plenty in this video, not a perfect draft. I mean, there were a lot of things that went wrong. Not necessarily that this person had a ton of control over. He didn't have control over Thomas getting hurt, Kittle getting hurt, Golladay getting hurt. But what did he do to overcome that? So we're going to take a look at everything throughout this team. And here's the quick summary, though. As you're going to end up seeing, this is a championship team. So you look at that and you're like, there's no way he won the championship. It's because of what he did during the season. So it was a 10-team league, half PPR, used RB0 a little bit. Started off 0-3, and you can kind of see why. Just did not have running back solved to start the season. And so it was difficult, I'm sure, to score a lot of points when he just didn't have very many running backs. Finished 9-4, so goes 9-1 over his final 10 games. Second seed, wins the championship. As you can probably guess, with the roster, only ends up with 4 of 16 drafted players, but leads the leagues in trades and acquisitions. 9 trades, 69 total acquisitions, and we're going to go over some of them now. This is how you win. It is being this good on the waiver wire and in trades. So we have week 3. Adds McKinnon. Maybe people don't remember. McKinnon was actually a pretty hot waiver ad last season, and he had a lot of really solid games. Now, he didn't end the season particularly well because they didn't really use him all that much, has some injuries, so people probably won't remember, but he was definitely a hot waiver ad. Myles Gaskin, obviously, was a great waiver ad. Didn't work out dropping Cam Akers in week 3. Anything I italicized is something that he had said in his breakdown. But yeah, that was the big one. The big one that he gave him an Akers a little bit too early, but a lot of people did, so you can't really fault him for that. Does a trade in week 3. This trade does not really work out as well. I mean, trades away Brandon Cooks for Naheem Hines. This was his first attempt, and so when we look at his draft, it was pretty clear that running back was his weakest spot, at least maybe not to start the season, in week 1, but when you get to week 3, I mean, I'm sure he was figuring out, hey, I need upgrades at running back, and that's exactly what's going to happen in an RB0 draft. So let's just pretend that he had gone wide receiver in 4 of the first 5 rounds, grabbed a quarterback, grabbed a tight end, and he doesn't have very many running backs. This is what we would see. We would see him trading away one of these wide receivers in the later rounds for an attempt at running back. Again, this one didn't work out. It seemed like to start the season, maybe Hines was going to be used kind of like Austin Eckler was, but midway through and to end the season, it was really just the Jonathan Taylor show. Week 4 has a great waiver move, adds Justin Jefferson. Week 5 adds Justin Herbert. Both of those he was able to flip in trades. In week 5 as well, trades away McKinnon that he added, trades away Golladay, who's just not playing in the season, for Devonta Parker and Jonathan Taylor. Mentioned that McKinnon, like I said, I mean, he was a hot waiver ad and he had a few really nice games. And so this trade, looking back, is horrible for the person trading away Parker and Taylor. You're like, why would they ever have done that? Because McKinnon was doing exceptional. Taylor wasn't doing anything to start the season. And then it was basically you're looking at Golladay, when Golladay returns, he's going to be a 1. And so that's a downgrade to Parker. That's at least what the person trading away Parker and Jonathan Taylor was probably thinking. But of course, we know this worked out great for our guy here. Also in week 5, trades away Justin Jefferson, who we added, and Damian Harris for James Robinson. That was an exceptional trade. I mean, honestly, it was probably fine on both ends. Like, both people were probably okay with this trade. If you got Justin Jefferson, you were not sad about giving away a running back. You got Damian Harris in return as well. Obviously, though, we now know the James Robinson side wins this trade, but it's not like a massive difference. Week 7 adds Brandon Ayuk, so now he's got probably 2 of like our favorite ads, probably 3 of our favorite ads and trades for last season. We really wanted you guys trading for Jonathan Taylor, and then really wanted you to add Ayuk and Jefferson. Those were like really, really strong points in the first half of the season. So he gets that in. Week 8 trades away Justin Herbert, James Robinson, and Myles Gaskin for Kamara. We were heavily pushing this as well. Even if you're giving away, I mean, Gaskin, parts of the season, he was like, a high-end running back 2. Justin Herbert was exploding at this part of the season. We've got James Robinson, a running back 1. So package all 3 of them were very, very valuable pieces for 1. Always want to do that. Also in week 8, trades away Dallas Goedert, gets T. Higgins. Said he ends up flipping T. Higgins in the future, but also said that this was with a Eagles fan. Always want to do that. Make sure you know what team each person in your league roots for. For a lot of you, it's going to be the same team you root for. I mean, a lot of you are in your hometown leagues. Most people are going to be around people who are rooting for like the same team as them, if you live in the same area. But if you don't, you have a team or a league, I guess, from players that are all around the country. Take note. Be like, oh, this guy's a Vikings fan. This guy's a Bills fan. Can I use that to my advantage? They're probably more likely to trade for those players. So that was a good trade. Also, move into week 11. Now we talk about trading away Higgins. So effectively, what he was able to do was say, I'm going to grab Higgins. He's going to start exploding. I'm going to use that peak. Now, he, of course, didn't know that Burrow was going to get injured, but he's going to sell high on the peak of Higgins, throw in Jarvis Landry, throw in James Conner, and acquire Derrick Henry. And you say, well, how could this have been done? Sometimes it's honestly just about timing things right. We see Derrick Henry having the 6.8 and 11.4 fantasy points in back-to-back weeks. And then you look at T. Higgins. Well, he was averaging, 88 receiving yards per game over his last 6. He was coming off 7 for 115 and a touchdown. So he's starting to explode, break out in his rookie season. You throw in Jarvis Landry, a name everyone knows, everyone trusts, and James Conner, and you can see how the Derrick Henry owner could have looked at that and been like, okay, yeah, I'm getting a lot of solid pieces for one guy who's underperforming right now. Again, we know not to do that, but not everyone is going to think exactly like we do. Final trade, Michael Thomas for Allen Robinson and Nyheim Hines. This was right when Thomas was returning from injury, so I believe he came back in week 9. Has like 2 mediocre games, so it was pretty clear he was on an upward trajectory. And so trading him away to acquire Allen Robinson, who had been scoreless in 5 of his last 6, wasn't going over 90 yards, and then gets Nyheim Hines back. I'm assuming that means that he had dropped him at some point, someone else added him, and he probably just wanted security for Jonathan Taylor. If Taylor went down, Hines was probably going to be the backup. That's at least the thinking that I think he had to have had. So, we have all those trades. What does his team look like now? So remember, this is what we were originally working with. And if you're looking at this is not a championship team. But again, you can't just look at the draft. You've got to look at what happens during the season. So his final roster was Josh Allen. He had Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry as his running back spots. Brandon Ayuk, Allen Robinson, a wide receiver. Logan Thomas at tight end. Jonathan Taylor in the flex. Bills defense. And Tyler Bass as the kicker. And then the bench. Kittle, Metcalf, Steelers defense. Evan Ingram, J.K. Dobbins, Drew Brees, and Mike Williams. That is a very, very, very solid team. Puts up 160.9 points in Week 16 to win the championship. And honestly, wasn't starting Metcalf, wasn't starting Kittle, wasn't starting the Steelers. So basically all of this lineup was just not drafted. Allen was drafted, but the rest of these guys were picked up off free agency, used in trades, and that's just like how you win. So we've got a lot of takeaways from this one. Again, one problem I have, defense, don't take it early. I know the Steelers were solid last season, but they weren't worth going ahead and getting them in the 10th round. Just take one in the final 2 rounds. And you say, oh, well, they were really good. Yeah, but over the final 5 weeks, which is when you really wanted your defense to do well, they were the 14th best defense. He didn't even start them in the championship. They were within a half a game on the whole season of a few different teams that you could have just picked up off free agency. And so it's just not worth it. Don't take defenses early. Again, no backup quarterbacks in 1-quarterback leagues. Your guys could bust, certainly, but you can find someone on free agency like he did. He had Herbert on free agency. There was no need to take Stafford in the later rounds. Just use that as another upside piece. Because we'll go back to the team here. I mean, who knows? If he had taken this Steelers pick and gotten a running back or a wide receiver, and then the Stafford pick, another running back or a wide receiver, I mean, maybe he doesn't need to draft Tevin Coleman here or Mecole Hardman here. Maybe he's able to get one of the sleepers we really liked, and maybe that just helps him out a little bit more. Again, it's a championship team, and I'm nitpicking, but it would have been nice to have a 10th round wide receiver or a 10th or 12th round running backs in these spots. It's just not worth it taking these backups. Another thing, like I mentioned, you got to know what the value is. Last season, there was so many value picks at wide receiver in the middle rounds, but he only took one wide receiver in rounds 4 through 10. Like, that just seems like a really big range to just never take a wide receiver. I know he thought he was safe taking some of the studs in the early rounds, but again, we do have a false sense of security. We love the people we draft, and we're like, there's no way that both Golladay and Michael Thomas bust. What? Well, it happened, okay? And so you have to plan for that and be like, okay, what's my team look like if one of these two isn't there? A little bit thin at a position I was taking early, okay. And there's a lot of value in the middle rounds. I would have liked to have seen at least one of those picks had been, or at least one more of those picks have been a wide receiver. And if we look at who he was taking instead, it'd have been fine with any of them. I mean, Connor, Akers, Bell, Moss in rounds 4, 5, 6, and 8. Substitute any of those guys with a wide receiver, and it would have been an improvement to the team. So I just think that was one mistake he made. It's another team, like I said to start the video, basically, where we only see 1/4 of the team that was drafted making it to the final roster, and I believe 3 of those pieces were on the bench. It was Kittle. I have to go back to the team. That's unfortunate. Yeah, Kittle, Metcalf, and the Steelers were 3 pieces that were drafted, end up on the bench in the championship. Only Josh Allen is starting. And this is a trend that we're probably going to see on basically every championship team that we look at. If you're trying to win a championship, you can't just leave the draft and be like, that's good. Like, my team is exceptional. I don't need to make moves, trades, waiver wire, pickups. And when you're evaluating your past teams, you can't just look at the draft because you can bust. And basically, let's see, I put it up here. You could argue that he busted in rounds 1, 3, 4, 6, 8, 13, and 14. And realistically, I included Kittle and Akers as not busting. So round 2, Kittle, he played, 7 games? Like, let's just say we count him as a bust. And we'll say we can count Akers as a bust because he ends up dropping him. So you could argue that among those first 8 picks, DK Metcalf was the only one that didn't bust. So busted in 7 of the first 8 picks, still wins the championship. Because the draft matters far less than we like to think that it does. But that's because the goal is just different than most people assume. Like, a lot of people think that you're building the draft to just completely construct your team for the season, but that's not the case. You're just trying to hit on 3 or 4 core pieces. For this draft, it was Kittle sort of, but it would have been Kittle if had he stayed healthy, but DK Metcalf and Josh Allen. Now, usually we see more on championship teams. We usually see a floor of 3 to 4 really solid pieces that carried them there. And so that's the goal is, okay, can I hit on DK, my quarterback? Maybe you hit on James Robinson late. He adds him, but James Robinson late. And it's that's the goal. So when you're evaluating your teams, make sure you're looking back, not saying, oh, I got a really solid bench here and I got some depth here. It's studs. It's upside. And so that's something we need to obviously take into account when we're drafting is, can this guy be a core piece? If the answer is no, probably not even worth taking him. If you're just taking him as, oh, he'll be a rotational piece, he never has a path to being a wide receiver 1, but he could be like a solid 3. No, don't take him. It's just not worth it. If you're not going to end up starting a championship team, don't do it. And I think this also shows how RB0 can work, because look at the running backs that he drafted. James Conner, Cam Akers, Le'Veon Bell, Zach Moss, Tevin Coleman, and Damian Harris. Pretty garbage, right? I mean, if we're looking back at the end of the season, that did not work out. Finishes with Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, and J.K. Dobbins. That's dominant. That's one of the 4, like if you're putting together a piece, not just like counting, the running backs 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the season. But if you're saying like realistically, what could you have possibly acquired last season? Is there a 4 that can really rival that? Because like I said, like it's pretty difficult to have gotten 4 just like top 5 running backs, but you got like 2 top 5 running backs. You got 2 running backs that exploded to end the season. That's a really nice 4. And if you told me going into the draft or coming out of the draft, that he was going to have that with the 6 players that he drafted, Connor, Akers, Bell, Moss, Coleman, and Harris, you'd have never thought that. And so again, it's about getting these studs, multiple players in a trade for 1, and just about trying to hit on some core pieces. And it honestly would have been easier, like I said, if in those middle rounds he hadn't just said, well, I took 2 wide receivers, guess I got to hammer out running back because I just have to do it. You don't have to do anything. You can try RB0 and take 4 wide receivers and then a tight end and then a quarterback and just completely abandon running back, because it can work out. It clearly did for this team, and he didn't even go full RB0, which would have worked out even more. So I want to know your guys' thoughts on RB0 in general as a strategy. Most people just completely hate it, but when you look at a draft like this, it makes complete sense. And he even busts on some of the wide receivers. Like it just makes so much sense to say, I'm just gonna grab this tight end, this quarterback. I'm good at those pieces. I'm going to grab some stud wide receivers. You can hit on that. And if you can trade for guys like Kamara and Henry, and you can add guys like James Robinson, you're building so much upside into your team that to me, it makes a lot of sense. Now, again, it's a strategy. It's only something you use when the value is there. So if you're sitting there at like the 3rd pick and you're like, well, have to go RB0, have to take Michael Thomas, or I have to take Devonta Adams. No. But if everyone's taking running backs, which I guarantee you is going to happen again this season, and you've got a ton of value and you're sitting there like, oh, I can have Adams and Tyreek Hill. In the next round, I can have Darren Waller. And in the next round, I could maybe pick up like, I don't really know what would be at this point, like a Dak Prescott. And it's like, I think we need to get away from thinking we have to take a running back. Because when that busts and we got rid of the value, then the team is a little bit weaker. So, would love to know your thoughts on the RB strategy this season. And again, promo code FFA on the website. You get 15% off any of the packages now through the end of April at thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, then how about hitting that like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.